Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Georgetown student Eric Bazale Emil.
Good evening and welcome to today's forum event with Vice President Mike Pence, brought to you by the Institute of Politics and Public Service and the Young America's Foundation. My name is Eric Bazale Emil, and I'm a senior in the School of Foreign Service. I am also one of the co-chairs of GU Politics' Student Advisory Board. I work with our staff, fellows, and students to help develop programming that enriches the university community and pulls back the curtain on the inner workings of politics, policy, and journalism. Georgetown University is committed to promoting speech and expression and fostering the maximum exchange of ideas and opinions. We expect that everyone in attendance will respect the right of the speaker and the organizer to share their perspectives and ideas and not cause a disruption to today's event. There will be a question and answer session later in the program. Please be sure to phrase your comments in the form of a question. Please be concise and ask only one question. Now please welcome to the stage the Executive Director of the Institute of Politics and Public Service and the moderator of today's event, Mo Lathey.
Look at this. Hoya Saxa, everybody. Welcome. I can't thank you all enough for taking some of your evening to join us tonight for this conversation. I want to thank our partners at the Young America's Foundation for helping us put this together. For those of you that are new to the Institute and GU Politics, we're here on campus, founded about 7.5 years ago, to really do two things. One, pull back the curtain on Washington a little bit for all of you, to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly of how this system really works by putting you in the same room as the people who run it. But number two, if you believe as I do, that one of the biggest challenges facing our democracy today is hyperpolarization. We want to put people from different perspectives together to have the hard conversations, sometimes to find common ground, oftentimes not, but to see if we can at least find common motivation, to see if we can have a better understanding of the different positions before we step out onto the field ourselves. Sometimes you find common ground, but sometimes it just makes you a better advocate for your own side if you can understand where the other side is coming from. For those of you that know me, you know I spent most of my career after graduating from Georgetown as one of those brass-knuckle brawlers in the political arena on the Democratic side. I wrote a lot of press releases attacking tonight's speaker. The guy he beat for vice president in 2016 is a dear friend of mine who officiated my wedding. But I was so excited when he accepted our invitation to come here tonight. Not just to share with you his worldview, but to take your questions, to give you the platform to engage with him, just as we do with all of our speakers, whether it's Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg, or Marco Rubio, or Speaker Paul Ryan, or Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We are committed to bringing people together from across the ideological spectrum and give you the platform to ask them whatever you want. That's why we're here. That's what this program is about. I cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight. I think it'll be a good conversation. To introduce our speaker, I would like to, you first met Eric, one of our two student co-chairs. Let me introduce you to the other one, Grace Xu, a senior in the School of Foreign Service, who will introduce our speaker tonight. Please welcome Grace.
Thank you, Mo. My name is Grace Xu, and I'm a senior in the School of Foreign Service. I'm also the co-chair of the GU Politics Student Advisory Board, and have been involved with our student-run podcast, Fellows Program, and Hoyas in Iowa. During my time at Georgetown, I've had the privilege of serving as vice president of the College Republicans and interning on the 2020 Trump-Pence campaign leading up to Election Day. As a Christian and a conservative myself, Vice President Mike Pence's example of faith, hard work, and family values has long inspired my passion for public service. It is my distinct honor to introduce him as today's speaker. Michael R. Pence was the 48th Vice President of the United States. Prior to serving in the White House, Vice President Pence represented East Central Indiana for 6 terms in Congress. There, he championed limited government, fiscal responsibility, economic development, educational opportunity, and the U.S. Constitution. In 2012, he was elected governor of Indiana. As governor, he enacted record tax cuts while increasing school funding, expanding school choice, and creating the first state-funded pre-K plan in Indiana history. Before entering public service, Vice President Pence was an attorney and host of The Mike Pence Show, a syndicated talk radio show and weekly television public affairs program. Following his remarks, the Vice President will take your questions in a discussion moderated by Mo Alathe, Executive Director of GU Politics. You can join the conversation on social media by tagging @GU Politics and the official event hashtag #Pence@GU. Today's event is also co-sponsored by Young America's Foundation. Now, please join me in welcoming to the stage Vice President Mike Pence.
Well, thank you for that warm welcome, and thank you, Grace, for that overly generous introduction. I'm very humbled by it. It's good to see so many people out tonight, and I'm grateful for your time. I want to thank, in particular, Young America's Foundation and Georgetown's Institute of Politics and Public Service for inviting me to be here at this storied institution. But I will tell you, Grace may know this already, the introduction I prefer is a little bit shorter. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order, and I am honored to be at Georgetown University tonight. So again, to the Georgetown Institute and to Young America's Foundation, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. And to Mo Alathe, thank you so very much for your warm welcome and for your voice on the national stage. I don't agree with you on much, but I do agree that you're a good man and you're a good leader here at Georgetown, and I'm grateful for that. You know, Mo and I were chatting before, and we'll chat a little bit after my remarks. You know, some of you that know me well for many years know I like to say I'm a conservative, but I'm not in a bad mood about it. You know, I love a good debate. I love the give and take. Back when I was in the Congress of the United States, when I was a governor, or even as your vice president. But I can tell you, I truly do believe that, you know, you can say to somebody that they got bad ideas without saying they're a bad person. I hold the view, and have for many years, that democracy depends on heavy doses of civility. And so I'm particularly grateful to Georgetown University and to you, Mo, and to the Institute for organizing a place where people can come together and celebrate respect for every American of every viewpoint. So thank you for that. It's an honor to be here. You know, Benjamin Franklin famously said that our founding fathers created a republic if you can keep it. And I truly do believe, looking out at this shining generation, as I've traveled across campuses all across this country since I left office, that I believe this is a generation that can keep it, because this is a generation that loves freedom. I want to share with you a little bit of my story and then a little bit of my views before we hear what's on your mind. But, you know, my story began in a small town in southern Indiana. I grew up one of 6 kids in a family that ran gas stations. My dad didn't have any use for lawyers or politicians, so you can imagine I'm a source of great pride to him to this day. When I started in politics, I was actually a Democrat. I was the Youth Democrat Party coordinator in Bartholomew County, Indiana in 1976. I'll never forget the day that I met Walter Mondale at the Capitol building. He was there for the swearing in of a senator. And I said, Vice President Mondale, I hope it doesn't bother you too much to tell you that it's an honor to meet you, but I also voted for you. He was a little surprised. But suffice it to say, as my high school years went on and I began to study the American founding, my views began to shift. I began to think deeply about my upbringing, my immigrant grandfather who came to this country from Ireland, the ideals that my dad, a combat veteran, had taught me to believe in. And as time went on, I found my views shifting. The most important of which is when I went to college, I made the faith of my upbringing my own when I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. And it's made all the difference. But you know, it was also a time in my life that my politics began to shift. And frankly, much of that was a result of the values and voice of the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. When I heard Ronald Reagan's vision for the country, a strong national defense, limited federal government, traditional values, I heard the ideals that I was raised to believe in. And I joined the Reagan Revolution and never looked back. You know, I actually met President Reagan in 1988 when I was pretty close to the age of most of the people in this room. I was a first-time candidate for Congress, standing there with my young bride. The president was ending 8 years of an extraordinary administration that had literally transformed the American economy and transformed the world in so many ways. But I'd been inspired to become a Republican because of Ronald Reagan, and I was standing in line for the photo op. And I turned to my young wife, Karen, who, by the way, hasn't changed a bit in 37 years. And I said, you know, our campaign team said that I was supposed to mention something about our campaign or about how we needed a bridge or something, or a river to go with a bridge or something you asked the president for. And I said to her, you know, I just feel like I'm going to tell my grandkids about this meeting. And Karen looked at me and she said, just talk from your heart. And so I walked into the Blue Room and I sat down in one of those gold-backed chairs and I looked into Ronald Reagan's face, and for all the world, I felt like I was talking to Mount Rushmore. And I looked at him and he said, Mike, how's the campaign going? And I said, it's going fine, Mr. President, but I got something I'd like to say to you. And he said, well, go ahead. And I said, Mr. President, I just want to say thank you for everything you've done to inspire my generation of Americans to believe in this country again. And for all the world, I'll always believe, as long as I live, that in that moment, the 40th President of the United States almost blushed and said, well, Mike, that's a very nice thing of you to say. It was like he'd never heard it before, but I knew he had. Well, I wasn't successful in those early campaigns. In fact, I lost my first 2 races for office. It's one of the things Newt Gingrich and I have in common. It took us 3 times trying to get to Congress. That would wait 10 years. But my career would take me into talk radio. I was a talk radio show host in the state of Indiana. I know it doesn't seem like I'm interesting enough to do that 3 hours a day. But I hosted the Mike Pence show, as Grace said, and it was kind of, you know, it was 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. It was kind of Rush Limbaugh on decaf. But eventually I had the opportunity. It came around again, sometimes as it does in politics. When you think your dreams have drifted away, sometimes they come back around. And this one did. And I ran for Congress in the year 2000 and was elected, had the privilege of serving for 12 years in the House of Representatives, 4 years as the governor of the great state of Indiana. And let me just say to each and every one of you, it was the greatest honor of my life to serve as your vice president. And I want to thank each and every one of you for the privilege. You know, On a personal level, the highest title I will ever hold is spelled D-A-D. Although I recently earned the title Grandpa, which I'm just as excited about. And the reason I feel so comfortable around all of you is because I got 3 people in your generation in my family. My son's a captain in the United States Marine Corps. My daughter writes for the Daily Wire every day. And my daughter Audrey graduated from Yale Law School. And I'm here to tell you, they are freedom-loving Americans with their own views. They love their mom, they love their dad, and they love America. Yours is a great generation. I've seen it firsthand. So my life has changed a lot since I left office. Karen and I moved back to Indiana, bought 5 acres and a pond, bought a riding mower, John Deere 54-inch deck, 0-turn radius, 25 horsepower. You know, one of the great things about no longer being vice president is you get to drive your own car. One of the bad things is you get to pay for your own gas. But Karen and I learned a timeless lesson, and may be only true in the United States for someone that serves in high office. This is true. I learned you can be the congressman from your hometown for 12 years. You can be the governor of that state for 4. You can be the vice president of the United States of America, but you're still going to wait 25 minutes for a table at Olive Garden on Saturday night. Absolutely true story. When I texted my daughter, I was complaining a little bit, sitting out on the bench. I texted my daughter Charlotte, and I said, we've been out here 20 minutes waiting for a table. She just sent me back an American flag and said, "That's America, Dad." You know what? She's right. It was Calvin Coolidge that said that we draw our presidents from among the people, and it is altogether a good thing that they return to them. And I must tell you, it's been a blessing for me in so many ways to be back home again in Indiana. But times have changed for all of us. And sadly, in many ways, today our country is unrecognizable to what it was just a few short years ago before that terrible pandemic. As we gather today, America is in crisis. The enemies of freedom are on the march in Eastern Europe. Our borders are under siege, facing the worst crisis in their history. Inflation's at a 40-year high. Gasoline prices are through the roof. Crime is besetting many of our major cities, and our economy is in a recession. And the truth is, as we gather here today, freedom is under attack, like never before. It seems like every day a new story breaks that says that big media, big government, big tech, or big business have locked arms to advance a woke agenda designed to advance the policies and beliefs of the American left and show intolerance to people that have divergent views. It seems to me that, having served many years in Washington, leaders in this nation's capital have never been more out of touch, or more intent on imposing their agenda, or walking out on people that might have a different point of view. Because the anthem of America is freedom. There's a cure for what ails our country today and the divisions that we see in our politics today. And that's freedom. And frankly, I'm very optimistic that in 20 days, we'll soon have new majorities in the House and Senate and in state houses around America that will stand for freedom without apology. The conservative movement that I've been a part of since those days of Ronald Reagan is a movement that's always been built on the notion that ideas have consequences. Conservatism is bigger than any one moment, any one election, any one person. It's always been about ideas. And I can tell you firsthand that every day of the Trump-Pence administration, We built our agenda on the ideals that have always made this country strong and prosperous and secure. In 4 short years, we rebuilt our military. We revived the economy, created 7 million good-paying jobs through less taxes, less regulation, and trade deals that put American jobs and American workers first. And I want to give credit where credit is due. We had a U.S. trade representative during the 4 years of our administration who was a tenacious advocate for American jobs and American workers. And to his credit, he negotiated what would become the largest trade deal in American history, the USMCA. Join me in thanking Bob Lighthizer for his great service to America. Thank you, Bob. By advancing the principles of economic freedom, we literally became a net exporter of energy for the first time in 70 years. We held China accountable for years of trade abuses. We secured our border and reduced illegal immigration by 90%. And with our renewed strength, the armed forces of the United States of America took out the ISIS caliphate, took down their leader without one American casualty, and the most dangerous terrorist in the world is gone. And closer to home, maybe most meaningful to me, as we saw confirmed some 300 conservatives to our federal courts at every level. Including 3 justices who this last June gave the American people a new beginning for life. In 48 months, our administration achieved the lowest unemployment, the highest household income, the most energy production, the most trade deals, the most secure border, and we made the strongest military in the history of the world stronger still. But how times have changed. In 1 short year and a half, the Biden-Harris administration has unleashed a tidal wave of left-wing policies that have in many ways wiped out the progress that we've made, to the detriment of the American people. Frankly, sometimes I think Democrats have moved so fast that the left hand doesn't know what the far left hand is doing. But I must tell you, living out in the heartland as I am, it's heartbreaking to see what's happening. The worst border crisis in history, inflation tearing into family budgets. I was pumping gas at a gas station in Hobart, Indiana, not long ago. Helped a woman who had 2 little children in the back seat. And I asked her what the impact of high gasoline prices was on her family budget. And she looked at me and she said, "Well, I don't work. I'm home with the kids. My husband has a good job, but," she said, "we've been having to go to the food bank twice a week because of gasoline prices. Because their gasoline budget comes right out of their grocery budget." I mean, the times we're living in are working great hardship on the American people. And maybe one of the most troubling developments of the past year has been this administration's wholehearted embrace of the woke left's all-encompassing assault on culture and values. I call it the intolerance of tolerance. I don't have to tell conservatives on any campus in America about the assault on free speech or the intolerance of divergent viewpoints on most campuses. It's one of the reasons why Georgetown is to be commended for creating this institute and facilitating this dialogue. You know, when it comes to free speech, I think Thomas Jefferson probably said it best. He said, "As long as we may think as we will and speak as we will, the condition of man will proceed in improvement." Freedom of speech is the God-given birthright of every American, and we will never let the woke left take it away. So it's a challenging time, and there's much division in the land. Our politics is very divided. But I must tell you, living out in Indiana every day, going to the grocery store, grabbing a sandwich on the fly, I'm not convinced the American people are as divided as our politics. The truth is, what we need is a debate and government as good as our people again. And I'm confident that we will soon, and very soon, because I have great confidence in your generation. I know you'll be the ones to stand on the ramparts of freedom. You'll be the ones to stand proudly on the legacy of liberty enshrined in our founding documents and Bill of Rights. You are the freedom generation, whether you know it or not. And some of us old-timers in the room marvel sometimes at the freedom that you have in your lives every day. I mean, when I was growing up in Columbus, Indiana, if I heard a good song on the radio, let me tell you how it used to work. I'd go down to the local music store. I'd thumb my way through all the 45 records, see if I could find it. You people just pull it out of your pocket, hold it up to the radio, and you own the song. Men and women, you're the freedom generation. You are used to freedom, and I know this generation is going to defend the freedom of every American, regardless of their views or values. I'm confident of it. But tonight, I just want to leave you with an admonition and a challenge. And I look very much forward to what's on your mind tonight. I just want to encourage each and every one of you that cherishes freedom. Take this time in your life to wrap your mind and your heart around the founding documents of this country. You know, Georgetown has a special connection to the history of our country, situated as it is here in our nation's capital. I mean, literally generations of Americans who have aspired to someday serve in this city have come to this place. And judging from the nods in the room, I know that tradition continues. This is an exceptional student body, regardless of your politics. You came here for many reasons, but many of you came here with a heart for service. And so I want to challenge you in that spirit. Take this time in your life to reflect on the words of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. They're not poetry, they're principles. The Declaration set forth the reasons for which we broke from the most powerful nation on earth. The Constitution is the framework for the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world, and you should learn it. And while there's great debate in our political theater, we all agree what the mission is, because it's written in the Constitution. All of us who serve in public life, including in the uniform of the United States, commit ourselves to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. So I want to say your generation must be a generation that cherishes our heritage. Train yourself up, prepare your minds for action to be that freedom generation, because the truth is, you may be the last line of defense on the Constitution of the United States. You know, for most of our history, both political parties were committed to the ideals enshrined in our Constitution. But sadly and increasingly, that's no longer the case. We live in a time when some on the left routinely demean the American founding and seek to rewrite our Constitution and erode our liberties. Our First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, Second Amendment, right to keep and bear arms, or the principles of limited government enshrined in the 10th Amendment. So let the Constitution and Declaration be your guide if you aspire to public service. You know, it's important to note that every office holder takes the same oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And if you're called to public service, you'll be called to take that oath. I recited that oath on the floor of the Congress, outside the Indiana State House, and on a January day in 2017, with my left hand on the Bible of Ronald Reagan, and my right hand in the air. I made a solemn promise, not just to the American people, to support and defend the Constitution, but it ended with a prayer. So help me God. And I can tell you, I prayed every day for 4 years to have the grace to do just that. If you aspire to serve the American people, they must know that you will always keep your oath to the Constitution, even when it would be politically expedient to do otherwise. You know, the Bible says he keeps his oath even when it hurts. And so you must be these same men and women. The American people must know that you will always keep your oath to the Constitution, that you'll live out what George Washington said. The Constitution is the guide I will never abandon. So help you God. So I want to say to this rising generation, use this time in your life to develop the qualities of the inner man and the inner woman that will make you such leaders. You know, people follow people that they trust. So I encourage you in this time, as you study the American founding and understand what's made this country exceptional and unique, grow in your own heart and mind. As the old book says, grow in wisdom and in stature and in grace before God and grace before men. And I promise you, you'll be the leaders this nation will need in the days ahead. And finally, I would just encourage you to remember that the core of the American experiment is the belief, I think unique in all of history, that we don't get our rights from a charter. We don't get our rights from a sovereign. But we as Americans believe that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. So never forget that the foundation of America is freedom. But the foundation of freedom is faith. So at this time in your life, as you look to grow and to be the kind of men and women that our nation will need for a future of freedom as we rapidly approach our 250th year, I encourage you to reflect on that timeless principle and on the promises of the one who said through the prophet Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. And the one who said he would never leave you or forsake you. Because I can tell you, he never will. And I believe if we keep faith in the American people, in the ideals of the American founding, and keep faith in one another, in the goodness of this country, and trust him who has ever guided this great experiment in freedom, I know the best days for the greatest nation on earth are yet to come. Thank you very much. Thank you for the welcome tonight. And God bless you all.
Okay. Mr. Vice President, thank you. Thank you for coming to Georgetown and for sharing with us
Thank you, Mo.
your thoughts and your views, and for your willingness to engage with our community. I want to thank so many of you for staying to ask questions of the former Vice President. So here's how this is going to work. We've got 3 microphones, one in the center aisle and one in each corner of the balcony. As you all line up, I'm going to start with a question, and I may come back at the end with a question, but we want to get to yours as quickly as possible. Mr. Vice President, one of the reasons I came back to Georgetown to launch this institute is because of my concern about the polarization in our country, which is about as bad as I've ever seen it in my career. I remember right after you and President, or during the campaign, when you and President Trump were running, that there was a lot of feeling that people on my side, people on the left, people in cities, the elites, were being dismissive of the concerns of a lot of people in the heartland. And I will say, and I really don't mean for this question to be provocative, it's really not my intention, but I would say as a Democrat, I think a lot of Democrats would be surprised to hear I actually agree that a lot of the rhetoric that is used is very dismissive. I would also say that I think a lot of people out there would feel equally as demeaned and do feel equally as demeaned when they hear that their legitimate concerns, that their feelings, that their situation is dismissed as just wokeism. And so here's my question. This is where I'm not trying to be provocative. I truly am not. But when you have each half here believing that they are being demeaned and belittled by the other side, how do we get past that? How do we come together and find those best days that are ahead of us as you describe them?
Well, Mo, thanks again for the welcome here today. Thanks for your leadership. And would you all join me in thanking the staff here at the Institute for putting tonight together? It's very special. I honestly believe the answer begins with treating others the way you want to be treated. I mean, you personify that. You know, in my years in the Congress of the United States, and I have some people that served with me when I was in the Congress who are here, I actually always believed that, you know, it's great to hit hard in a debate, but just on the issues. I'm not one that's inclined to question people's motives or sincerity. I want to accept, even when people don't stick around for my whole speech, that they hold their views sincerely. And I tried to manifest that when I was in the Congress of the United States, but it wasn't always the case. You know, I just finished my autobiography. It's going to be out in about a month. And I talk about the fact that in those early campaigns for Congress, Mo, despite the fact that I'd made a decision to put my faith in Christ and was wanting to hold myself to the standards of my faith in dealing with people, I got into some rough and tumble negative campaigns in those first 2 campaigns. You know, in politics, and I lived it then, was, you know, it's not, you know, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, but it's do unto others before they do unto you. And we did, but I got to the end of that campaign, and I wrote about this. I got to the end of that campaign, and I wrote an essay entitled Confessions of a Negative Campaigner. And I really just wrote it to clear my own conscience. I wanted to admit to the people of Indiana and to my district that I hadn't lived up to the standards I professed in my faith and the way I've dealt with people. So I'd gotten into a campaign that was rife with personal attacks. And in all my years on the radio, and where I had as many Democrats on my radio show as Republicans every day, and then my years in Congress, I always thought if I ever had the chance to serve, I would want to serve in a way that honored God and respected everyone. And I can't say that I did that perfectly, but I always aspired to it. And I'll tell you what, it generates opportunities that you wouldn't expect. I forged some friendships when I was in the Congress of the United States with some liberal Democrats that I have absolutely nothing in common with. except the fact that I knew that they were great men and sincere leaders and great Americans. One of them was the late John Lewis, who actually asked me, as a result of our friendship, to co-lead the 2010 pilgrimage to Selma, Alabama, to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge to mark the anniversary of Bloody Sunday. I was moved by that. John knew that Dr. King was an inspiration of my youth, and I knew John to be a man of sincere faith, and I think he assessed me the same. And so we had a bond. Even though we would debate on the House floor, we still had a relationship. And it actually created opportunities to find common cause. You know, I always like to say, never ask a Democrat not to be a Democrat, right? And you'd say, never ask a Republican not to be a Republican. But there's a wide range of issues that we can agree on, issues that we can find practical solutions for the American people on. But I think it all begins with treating others the way we want to be treated. And I really do believe that there's a hunger in this country today for getting back to the way Americans deal with one another. I mean, most Americans deal with their neighbors the same way, respectfully, generously, whether they agree or disagree. And so I like to say we just have to have government as good as our people. We have to respect one another, practice civility in public life, and I promise you that we'll find a future and we'll move forward together.
All right, thank you. All right. When I point to you, you're on, so get TV ready, as we say in the business. Tell us your name, where you're from, school and year, and then ask your question. And I'm going to start up there in that corner.
Hello, Mr. Pence. My name is Ronnie Brady. I am from Birmingham, Alabama.
Hello.
And I am a first year in the School of Foreign Service here at Georgetown. My question for you today is, I was hoping you could speak, or can you please speak on how, if at all, being President Trump's running mate and Vice President may or may not affect your future and of your political career in the Republican Party? Thank you.
How, I missed the last part of that question. How being vice president, or what was it?
Both being running mate in the 2016 election and being vice president under former President Trump, how those in tandem might affect your career in the Republican Party.
Oh. Well, first, thank you for the question. And what I can tell you is, people that know me well know that I'm actually not a long-term planner. I don't. It's worked out pretty well so far. I mean, when I ran for Congress, thank you. When I ran for Congress, we felt called to run. It was the year 2000. I felt like we could be a part of bringing an effort to Washington, D.C. to rebuild our military, revive our economy, to support what I'd been inspired to join the Republican Party for. When I was encouraged to run for governor of Indiana, it was a time of change in the state of Indiana, but I believed that we'd put 8 years of good leadership under our belts, and I thought if we put 8 more years that we could put Indiana on a solid track of growth and opportunity. And I'll tell you, when I got the phone call to join the national ticket in 2016, we approached it the same way. We just reflected on it, we prayed about it, and we felt called. I had somebody tell me years ago, they said there's 2 kinds of people in Washington, D.C. People that are called and people that are driven. I've been both, okay? But I can tell you, whatever the future holds for me and for Karen Pence, it'll be our heart's desire just to reflect at the right time, maybe in the months ahead, determine what our calling is, and we'll follow that calling come what may.
Thanks for the question. All right, let's go here to the center aisle.
Hello, Mr. Vice President. Thank you for coming to speak to everyone here. My name is Noah Vinogradov. I am a sophomore in the School of Foreign Service. I come from the great state of Pennsylvania, where the Constitution was signed and American liberty started. As demonstrated by your record, it is very clear that you are a proponent of law and order and of freedom. and I think that you spoke of opposing those who seek to erode our Constitution. I think many Americans believe that what you did on January 6th was brave in opposing the demands of Donald Trump to subvert the legal and free elections of 2020 in order to uphold the rule of law and the sanctity of our free and fair elections. So, Mr. Vice President, my question for you is why haven't you extended that bravery to publicly denouncing the violence of January 6th, as was condoned by President Trump, in order to scourge the Republican Party of Trump's anti-democratic, anti-freedom lies that you know to not be true?
Well, Noah, thank you for the thoughtful question. And I'm humbled by your assessment of my conduct. January 6th was a tragic day. But thanks to the courage of law enforcement at the Capitol and federal law enforcement, the violence was quelled. And we reconvened the Congress the very same day. And we completed our duty under the Constitution of the United States and the laws of this country. There was a lot going on that day, so you might have missed it, but I made some remarks before the United States Senate when we reconvened. The first thing I did was condemn the violence. I said, violence never wins, freedom wins. And I truly do believe in my heart of hearts that we did our duty that day under the Constitution. But I will tell you, as I've traveled all over the country, the last year and a half, they told me I've been in about 32 states. I've been very humbled at the number of Americans from diverse backgrounds and experiences that have expressed support for our actions that day. And I will tell you that when we reconvened the United States Senate, I thank the members in both political parties for staying at their post, coming back to work, and completing the peaceful transfer of power, and making what began as a day of tragedy a triumph of freedom. And I'll never describe that day or the violence in any other way than the way I described it that day and the way I describe it today. It was violence, it was unacceptable, but at the end of the day, it was a triumph of freedom thanks to people in both political parties who did their job.
Thank you for the question. Let's go up to this corner now.
Mr. Pence, thank you for being here. My name is George Clay. I'm a PhD candidate in the history department.
Hi, George.
Mr. Pence, if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for president in 2024, will you vote for him?
Well, there might be somebody else I'd prefer more. You know, what I can tell you is I have every confidence that the Republican Party is going to sort out leadership. All my focus has been on the midterm elections, and it'll stay that way for the next 20 days. But after that, we'll be thinking about the future, ours and the nation's, and I'll keep you posted, okay?
We'll be the first to know, right? Is that what you're saying? We'll be the first to know? Okay. All right, let's go up there.
Hi, Vice President Pence. My name is Claire, and I'm
Claire.
a freshman in the college from New Orleans. And since you were talking about finding areas of common ground, do you think that Republicans and Democrats can find any common ground on immigration and border policies?
It's Claire, right? Is it?
It is.
Good. A short answer is yes. I mean, one of the disappointments among many that I had that we didn't get 4 more years was after having secured the border, which we did, and it's hard to believe when you look at the thousands of people streaming across our border now, literally every week, that we had essentially eliminated illegal immigration and asylum abuse at the southern border of the United States. It's true. But Claire, what that did is I think it created the conditions where we, I think, could have moved on to immigration reform. In fact, people who are here who worked in and around the administration might actually know, we had on the drawing board a merit-based immigration reform bill that, having secured the border, having provided our border security personnel with the resources that they needed, having given the American people confidence that we were serious about being a nation with borders, we were going to move on to reform the immigration system in the country and modernize it and design it, frankly, in a way that reflected the immigration system when my grandfather came here from Ireland in 1923. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily know this, but you can look it up, check it out. And that is that when my grandfather came to America, he actually had to be certified in a particular profession because there was a quota for people in that profession from that country to be admitted through Ellis Island in New York Harbor. It's true. So my grandfather literally trained to be a tailor and came over, and he had that credential, and he was able to come and become an American. And that's how I got to be Vice President of the United States. That's Richard Michael Cawley. And Michael Richard Pence was named after him. But we have an immigration system today that's kind of a large, incoherent mash of, includes things like chain migration, others. It doesn't really think about what are the needs of America? What are the needs in the industries that need to grow? Where do we have labor shortages that we need people? And so we were looking to design a merit-based immigration system. And Mo and I will talk afterwards whether or not there's an opportunity to do that someday. But I still think it's an idea whose time has come, and it will come. I truly do believe that the American people know right now our borders are broken and we got to secure our border, but they also know we have a broken immigration system in America, and we owe it to this generation and to future generations to fix it, and we will.
Thanks for the question, Claire. All right, let's go back to the center aisle.
Hello, I'm Benny Chang. I'm a freshman in the School and Foreign Service, and I'm from San Jose, California. In the past couple of years, we've seen polarization increase so much, and one of the most difficult things to see is how conflicted and how antagonistic our whole country has become. And one of my favorite things is seeing the bridging between Republicans and Democrats. And so I wanted to ask you something that would give you an opportunity to talk about that. So this is kind of a question similar to the 2016 presidential debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. What is something that you like about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
They're good students. These are good students. Benny, gee, look at the time. I'm kidding. You know, I've known President Biden for a long time. He was in the Senate when I was in the House. We served together on conference committees. And we frankly always had a good relationship. When I was governor of Indiana, he was vice president. We worked together. Indiana actually introduced the first consumer-directed health care in Medicaid. And we negotiated with the Obama-Biden administration to do that and expanded health care to tens of thousands of Hoosiers that wouldn't otherwise have it. But we did it with free market principles. And I will also say that when I was elected vice president during the transition, President Biden and Jill were very, very gracious to us, and I'll always be grateful for that. I can't identify a policy that I agree with in the Biden administration. But again, I think you can say that somebody's ideas are bad without saying they're a bad person. And I remember the day, Mo, that Kamala Harris was tapped to be Joe Biden's running mate. And I called her from Air Force Two. I think she was a little surprised. But I just told her, I said, Senator, I got that call once. So I said, I want you to know we're going to be praying for you and your family in the days ahead. And I'll never forget, she said to me, Mike, I really appreciate the spirit of this call. And we had our own spirited debate on national television. And we had barriers between us, but they weren't tall enough to even stop a fly. And we got strong differences. But look, I literally respect everyone, every man or woman. I don't care what your politics are. If you're willing to stand up and put your name on a ballot because you love this country, you have my respect. Okay?
Mr. Vice President, I so regret to have to say I am getting the evil eye that we are about out of time, and I know you need to move on, so I'm so sorry to all those of you that weren't able to get a question in tonight. I do want to say, Mr. Vice President, our slogan at the Institute of Politics and Public Service is public service is a good thing, politics can be too.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that gets tested, but it's my firm belief that the way we get there begins not with debate, but with dialogue. And so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming and engaging in dialogue with our community tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. It's a great honor.
And thank all of you for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Stay tuned for more GU Politics programming.
Thank you, Georgetown. God bless you all.
And thank you to the Young America's Foundation for being such great partners. Thank you all. Have a great night.